Welcome everyone to this webinar with me, Kaylin Castell, and Tammy Brunk on Knowing and Living Your Goddess Blueprint. We're only going to give you a little piece of that actually, but we're going to give you some really good information about how to begin doing that and some really fun information about that. We thought we would start with a invocation, and one of the things we do with each of the star phases, and for lots of things that we do, is we create little invocations, prayers, and different ways of connecting into the information or into the energy of that particular part. So what I just want to invite everyone to do is to maybe put your hand over your heart, close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you. Allow yourself a presencing breath, so it brings you fully present into this moment. As we call upon the evening star goddess, and the reason we're calling upon her is because Venus is in the evening sky now, so it is the evening star goddess that is present on the world stage at this time. So we're going to celebrate and invoke the evening star goddess. I, who am the beauty of the green earth, the white moon among the stars, and the mysteries of the waters, I call upon your soul to arise and celebrate with me. For I am the soul of nature, giving life to the universe. From me all things proceed, and unto me they shall return. Veneration and adoration for me is naturally found in the heart that rejoices. For behold, all intentional acts of love and pleasure are my rituals. Let there be beauty and strength, power and compassion, honor and humility, mirth and reverence within you. And you who seek to know me, know that your seeking and yearning will avail you not unless you know the mystery. For if what you seek you do not find within yourself, you will never find it without. For behold, I have been with you from the beginning, and I am all that is attained at the end of desire. Blessed be.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kaylin. I love that. So what we are going to be exploring today is really to look at the one component of what we work with in our Venus Signature series in understanding our Goddess Blueprint. And we're going to most deeply speak into how to find your Venus star phase. And so we're going to talk about Venus Morning Star retrograde and what that looks and feels like a little bit. We'll just touch on that. Venus Morning Star, what does that mean if you're born into the Morning Star phase, if that's your phase? Inanna Underworld, Venus Evening Star retrograde, and Metamorphic Underworld. So what are these things about? How can you tune into that for yourself personally? And also how to find where you are in the journey.
Yeah, and just to say that it's not that hard to do, but if you do not have a natal chart, you can go online and get a free chart, and then you'll be able to figure it out, hopefully with the information that we're giving you. So finding the Venus star phase is essentially the morning star is, you'll see Venus rising before the sun. I'm going to show you how that looks on the chart. When Venus is an evening star, you see Venus well, it's not actually rising. It probably should be saying setting after the sun, because the sun will go down and then Venus is still in the sky, in the evening sky. And then if Venus is within 10 degrees of the sun, not retrograde, it's the Inanna Underworld. And we use the term Inanna Underworld because that's the story of Inanna, where she's going through her death and rebirth process. And then Venus retrograde within 10 degrees of the sun is in the Metamorphic Underworld. So we'll definitely be explaining more about that. But if you have your chart and you want to take a look at it, you'll be able to determine with this information what Venus star phase you were born into. So something to know about any natal chart. So this is basically a blank chart, but all the planets are moving clockwise around the chart. So this is basically a map of the sky of the moment, any moment when you run a chart. So whether it's, a current transit, or whether it's your natal chart or somebody else's natal chart, or any moment you want to look at, that is this is how the planets are going. So anything that is below the horizon line, and this is the east of the chart, this is the west of the chart, anything below this line is not visible, but will over time be rising. And then anything above is visible, unless the sun is there, and then you can't see it because the sun is there. But once the sun sets, if Venus is in the west after the sun sets, then it's an evening star. So that's how you can kind of get a sense of it. So here's some examples. This is a chart that was the new moon in January 1st of 2014. And you see Venus here at 26 Capricorn. It was retrograde. It was getting ready to begin a new cycle. The sun at around 11 Capricorn. So again, if the planets are moving in this direction, neither of them have risen yet. And so the sun will come up first and Venus will come up after. So this was retrograde Venus in the evening sky. So that's one of the ways that you can tell. So if probably the simplest, and one of the things I often tell people in our workshops is just take the chart and turn it so that the sun is at your belly. And when the sun is at your belly, if you see Venus to the right of the sun, it's evening star. If you see Venus to the left of the sun, it's the morning star. And that's because Venus will rise before the sun when it's morning star, and it will be in the sky after the sun has set if it's evening star. So that's just one way to be able to tell that really quickly. And if it has to be more than 10 degrees away from the sun for it to be visible in the sky. If it's within 10 degrees of the sun, it's going to be in one of the two underworlds. If it's retrograde, the short underworld. If it's not retrograde, it'll be in the longer Anana underworld. So these are just some examples. Like here, if you had the sun here on your chart and Venus here, even because you're not going to see them rising, they're not below the horizon, but Venus is going to set before the sun, and then it will have risen before the sun earlier that day, and the next day it'll be rising before the sun. So this is a way that you can see the morning star Venus. And then up here we see Venus is in the sky after the sun has set, and so that's how you can see an evening star Venus on the chart without turning the sun to your belly. So here's just a couple of other examples, again, of the morning star Venus and the evening star Venus that may be found in different parts of the chart. So then if you see Venus and the sun together, again, within 10 degrees, and they may be in the same sign, they may not be in the same sign, but they may still be within 10 degrees. Then it's that 60 to 90 day underworld. We'll share a little bit more about it in a moment. And if it's Venus with a retrograde sign beside it and very near the sun within 10 degrees, then we call that the metamorphic underworld. And we'll be explaining what that means shortly. So very exciting. So hopefully everybody, I know that's kind of quick, but this will be recorded, so you can go back and look at it again and get out your chart and check that out if you didn't really get that all in this little quick explanation.
Yeah, and I just want to add for people that, there are a number of people in this call that I think probably what you are. You may know your phase already. But even if you do, what's really fun about what Kaylin's sharing with you is that you can look it up for anyone. So
yes,
part of what's so fun about it is that you can really detect the patterns. Once we're done, you can kind of say, wow, I don't know anything else about this person, but I can figure out what their Venus star phase is and look for patterns. That's what's so fun about this.
Beautiful. Thank you for saying that, Tammy. And then this is just like a little kind of look at this, like if you're standing here on the earth and the pink little circles are Venus going around the sun. Of course, the earth is going around the sun, but when Venus and the sun are close to when Venus is close to the earth, it's always retrograde and it's always in the metamorphic underworld. When Venus is conjunct the sun far away from the earth on the other side of the sun, that's in the longer Anana underworld. So it's the reason why it lasts so long. So the short one happens, it's just a real quick transition between the sun and the earth, but when it's on the other side of the earth, it takes 60 to 90 days for that transition to take place. And so you have morning star Venus in the east, and you have evening star Venus in the west. So that just is an opportunity to see this. Now, another quick thing I want to say is that there are other ways of looking at the Venus cycle. We look at the 4 main star phases, and then we have also, I think, like 20 different inner star phases that we're not going to go into here, but we do that in other class. The inner star phases give us a more information, but the 4 star phases gives us so much more information than just looking at morning star, evening star, that a lot of astrologers do. They just, like, if Venus is conjunct the sun, retrograde, it's a morning, before the retrograde or whatever, then it's going to be a morning star. No metamorphic underworld is looked at. If Venus is conjunct the sun, not retrograde, then it's evening star. And that's it. Those are the 2 things that they look at, and there's no delineation between that. So we feel like this is really works, and probably any way you look at it can work for you, but this is what we found to be a little more in-depth understanding. And when you hear the underworld descriptions, you'll probably get why.
So, okay, so when Venus, and just to understand, we're going to start here with the beginning of the Venus cycle, which is when Venus rises as morning star. And the way that we work with this, that's how we see the beginning of the Venus cycle. And so Venus is going to always be retrograde when she first appears in the morning sky. She'll be about 10 degrees from the sun, a little bit, separating from 10 degrees. So that's the point at which you can begin to see her. So she's really going to be closer to the Earth than normal. That's true for any planet, but she's at her greatest strength. So Venus is, if retrograde, is she's for about 16 days is in the morning sky, and this happens every 19 months. So a new cycle will begin every 19 months where Venus appears in the morning sky. She will be, so after she appears, 16 days she's retrograde. And so if you're born when Venus is retrograde as morning star, that you're only like 2.7% of the population is going to be born at that time. So that's very, very rare. I mean, I don't know, Kaylin, I've seen that very, very rarely.
Very rarely, yes, absolutely.
So beginning a new cycle. So that's a really powerful time to be born. It's really kind of unique. And so again, that's when we begin the new Venus cycle. So we're not going to go too much into what that experience might look like if you're retrograde morning star specifically, but we will go more into depth with that in our larger class. That's just one of the inner phases, one of those smaller, more precise phases that we talk about. But morning star phase, again, part of what I think is so powerful about this is just imagine for a moment that if you're an astrologer, if you're into astrology, you don't have the technology, you don't have the capacity to draw a chart for someone, right? But you live in ancient times, and people in ancient times would have been able to observe Venus. She's the 3rd brightest object in the sky after the sun and the moon most of the time. And so when you're observing Venus, where she's at, if she's morning star, evening star, or with the sun in these 2 other positions, it's going to be a really dramatic thing. And so ancient astrologers would have perceived of that. They would have said, this really adds something to an individual's character based on what phase that person is born into. So it's exciting because it's a kinesthetic kind of experience when you're born into this morning star phase. So with morning star, or when the Venus phase. So with the morning star phase, if you were born when Venus was morning star, Venus would have appeared in the east before sunrise, close to the Earth, at greatest strength and near maximum brightness. When you were born, she will come to maximum brightness in the morning star phase, not too long after that first morning star rise. To the Greeks, she would have been known as the Phosphorus. That's the word they would have used, the light bringer. Athena, the goddess of inspiration, of courage and skill in battle, was associated to the ancient Greeks with Venus morning star. To the Romans, they would have referred to Venus morning star as Lucifer, or the shining one, again, the light bearer. Again, also because she's just so bright in the morning sky. And biblically, Christ also was referred to himself as bright morning star. So if you really think about the Lucifer story, for example, or the Christ story, you will have a sense for the way the morning star cycle actually works, which is that Venus is really bright. She like starts to rise up into the sky, very, again, pretty close to the earth and very bright at her strength. And then she begins to dip down, 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 further and further and further, becoming more and more faint until she finally is with the sun. And so it's this like this bright object in the sky that then goes through a descent and a diminishment. And so if you think about the story of Christ's sacrifice, or you think about Lucifer, this bright angel that's cast down, there's this theme with Morning Star that has to do with that bright being that kind of sacrifices himself, herself. To the Mayans, Quetzalcoatl was Morning Star Venus, the feathered serpent. And across Mesoamerica, which is one of the really interesting facts about Morning Star Venus, is that battles were timed to begin when Venus appeared as Morning Star. And that was actually across many cultures. And again, that has to do with kind of the yang energy of Morning Star Venus, that she's fiery, she's young. And so that energy and the potency of Morning Star is something to consider. If a person's born, then they carry that medicine. The Yolngu Aborigines this is a really interesting one. They had a goddess they named Barnambir. She was a creatrix. She was the goddess who created the song lines, and she also aids in communication with the ancestors. And so again, that's also Morning Star Venus. So she was very significant for them. And so if you're born, or someone is born at Morning Star Venus phase, the intent of that phase is that you are really holding, again, this yang kind of energy, that the way we see this is that there can be this expression that carries the triple qualities of the fire signs. So you have the capacity, you are here to cultivate the inner warrior goddess qualities of Aries, the kind of royal and sovereign qualities of Leo, the Queen of Heaven, the Sagittarian qualities of the one who is on the spirit quest. So if you're born Morning Star, no matter what sign your Venus is actually in, you add fire, you add the kind of spirit realm as an emphasis in your life pattern. And you can tap more into these fire sign energies if you're born as Morning Star. Even if you have, say like you have got a Pisces Venus sign, or you've got like Cancer or an Earth sign. If you're born with Morning Star, it's like that adds fire. So it's almost like you're this honorary fire sign. So just think of it that way. So when you are born as Morning Star, it's in your life, in this lifetime, it's time for you to commit to a complete and total transformation via descent into the underworld, meaning that it's to understand that each of us has gone through many Venus initiations. So we've all kind of gone through the Morning Star journey of death and rebirth. But if you're born as Morning Star, then that's a specific signature for you, that there's something about your life where this is a theme that's going to come up again and again for you to be willing to go through a deep transformation and to really commit to a process that is going to take you deeper than you've ever gone before, so that you can, again, completely transform whatever in you has not been deeply met, whatever in you has not come into full integration. So for a Morning Star individual, they're also here to learn to embrace trust and innocence in courageously facing the unknown, to love the growth of your soul more than outer appearance of success or accomplishment. And Kaylin, I think I do want to, we didn't really mention it somehow. I think we're just so accustomed to speaking of the cycle in this way, but we look at the Venus cycle as being guided by the Sumerian goddess Inanna and her descent and death and rebirth, and then ascent from the underworld. And so when we look at Morning Star, when we look at these 4 phases, it's also deeply informed by the idea that when you're in Morning Star phase, there is an aspect of your life journey that is mirroring the part of the Inanna descent story, where the goddess, who is this bright, bold, courageous, powerful goddess of heaven and earth, she chooses to go to the underworld And when she does that, she is required to remove at each of 7 gates vestments or adornments, including her crown, for example, her royal, all the way down to her royal robe. So she is required to let go of everything that gives her her sense of social standing, her sense of ego identity, who she knows herself to be in the world. She has to let all of that go so that she can make her descent into the underworld and offer herself to this sacred initiation to be transformed. So a person born at the Morning Star phase may be someone who, it's kind of like, we'll say, it's like she doesn't know what she doesn't know. She's willing to do this scary thing, to be courageous enough to go into the unknown, and to let go of who she thought she was. So there's a feature of that for the Morning Star person. And it's to meet challenges and bravely sacrifice old identities and patterns to become more whole, more holy, to willingly surrender all false embodiment of power and prestige for complete ensoulment, wisdom, depth, and wholeness. So there's definitely a deepening of the soul. It's a soul deepening journey for a person who is Morning Star Venus.
You know, that it also, I love that you explained the Nana story a little bit more. We do that in other places in great depth, but it is that aspect that I remember being taught years ago, that Dane Rajar, who is a very well-known astrologer in the 70s, 60s and 70s, and kind of helped create a renaissance of the astrology that was happening then. And basically, he was, would say that if you had Morning Star Venus, it'd be like adding, he just said Aries, but because there was more action before reflection. So if you thought about Venus reflecting on this descent journey and what she's going to have to let go of and give up going into the underworld, she might not do that, but because she just acts, because she just is that fiery energy, she just acts, she's going to take this journey and go through that alchemical transformation. So I just wanted to add that piece.
That's so important. That's powerful.
Could I ask a question?
Oh,
is Morning Star Venus, is that like Venus retrograde?
You know what, actually, I'm sorry, I want to apologize, because usually I've tried to mute because we like to wait and do questions at the end, but I'll say Venus can be retrograde when she's in the morning or the evening star phase. So,
okay.
So,
sorry to interrupt.
So that's fine. It's because somehow I had missed being able to mute everyone. So I'm just going to go ahead.
So if there's a way to mute everybody as they're coming in, that's probably
yeah.
Well, I came in a little late, and you can actually unmute yourself, but I'm going to mute myself back now.
I think, because it should be, I might just take that, allow participants to unmute themselves. Okay, I'm going to take that off for now, and I will change it later. So, okay, but glad that people are engaged and asking questions. So save your questions for the end, and we definitely want to answer those. So Morning Star phase, challenges on the path. May be light polarized. What that refers to is that a person who is Morning Star, again, it's like there might be a part of your personality, of your way of being, where you might be like Inanna when she begins the journey, where she's so powerful and she's so accustomed to kind of getting her way and being able to kind of use her willfulness to do whatever it is she wants to do. And being light polarized can sometimes have to do with this way that, because it's like a person maybe who comes in with a great deal of privilege but hasn't had quite the same degree of loss in their lives. Perhaps when we're very young, we don't really know what it feels like to encounter a lot of loss and a lot of life obstacles. So we might be the kind of person where when someone else has a loss, we might say to them, because our own lack of life experience, something like, well, I'm sure there's a reason why that happened, and I'm sure everything's going to be okay, even when that person is in the depths of grief and sorrow. There might be that way of just like wanting to go into spirituality to kind of explain everything, that everything's fine. So morning star Venus can be kind of like that sometimes when she's not really tempered with compassion. She might be distant and aloof to suffering, again, because she's kind of accustomed to being the one who's in charge, who's got more of that masculine energy of making things happen and fixing things. And so there might be, again, not quite that depth of soul yet at a certain stage in the morning star Venus journey. Might be that a Venus morning star, like she's, again, got all this fire, she's got all this desire to act before she reflects. She might overcommit. She might deny her limitations around time and abilities. That can be a challenge. She might have excess fire or pitta. If you've ever had an assessment through an Ayurvedic practitioner, you know what that means. It's a person who is going to charge ahead and maybe be kind of doing addicted, but isn't so good at stopping and reflecting and being very measured and thoughtful about the way that they go about accomplishing their tasks. And might also burn out. That's something that can happen for Venus morning star. May struggle with anxiety or depression, and that can be if you've got all this fire but it's turned inward. Say you're born into a culture as a woman, for example, where it's not okay to claim your power. It's not okay to be really action oriented and really be very much of a doer and be really independent. It's more projected onto you that you be very receptive and you be very passive and you be very other oriented. Well, if that's the case for you in your morning star, you might actually struggle with anxiety or depression because you haven't fully claimed this fire, this morning star powerful energy that you need to go through your full soul kind of cultivation process. So also you may be addicted to conflict or drama, and that's can be another morning star challenge, because again, of all this energy that you've got moving through your body that you want to do something with, and if you don't have a good outlet, it could be that you use that energy to stir up conflict. You may also become paralyzed with fear of loss. That's possible because a part of you knows, even though you might resist it, that you really are here to become more of a human being. You're really here to drop deeper into the experience of compassion and empathy, and to really overcome your fear of truly feeling life and truly experiencing things and joining the rest of the human family and deeply caring about what happens to others around you, and really being willing to connect and bond with life more. So, so these are just some of the things that you might struggle with. If you are morning star Venus, it's possible, maybe not. But these are some of the challenges that we're actually here, if you are a morning star, I am, that you can see as kind of benchmarks when you're able to really heal or address whatever of these challenges you might find yourself to be grappling with.
And just something else, and we don't have time to go into this, is that depending on what sign your natal Venus is in and being morning star. So for example, if you have, say, Venus in Taurus and you're a morning star, you may not have the challenge of excess pitta or fire or whatever, but you may have some of the other challenges in a different way. So, the sign that your natal Venus is in, we're adding this to it, so that helps us to get a bigger understanding of what that is about and how we might work with that. So I know, Tammy, you're a morning star. I'm an evening star. I have a fiery Venus, but it's tempered by the evening star. And when I found that out, it just made so much difference in my understanding of my Venus. And I also didn't feel so bad that I wasn't as fiery as I thought I should be. Right. So this is one of the reasons this can be so helpful to understand, because it gives us another lens to really get to be more compassionate to what our experience is.
Absolutely, totally. I so agree with that. And I think too, one of the ways I've looked at this is it has to do with I think what most turned me on about this when Kaylin and I began doing this particular class was that I was looking at some of the challenges in my personal life. And I started looking at those challenges from the perspective of being a Venus morning star. And I started to say, and you may remember this, Kaylin, I remember our conversation. I was like, oh my God, I'm going through this separation from my partner of 10 years. And when I really take in that I'm like Inanna, this morning star Inanna, and I'm it's for me to go through this descent process and to be courageous enough to really do this thing that's really hard. It gave dignity to my journey. It helped me to honor it. And the way that my soul was really helping me orchestrate this and help me understand it at a deeper level. So I think that's also part of what the Venus phase can help us with. So in any case, we always in our classes offer morning star phase questions, and that can help us to kind of deepen into, again, because questions are so powerful, deepen into the inquiry around how to more powerfully engage this energy in our lives. So what would it take for me to willingly dismantle all false power, strength, and status so I live from my deepest soul self? So that, just that question, that's a life question. And at certain stages in our journey, we're going to really feel into that more and more. What am I willing to sacrifice to experience more of the sacred? The word sacrifice is a tricky word, but it's one that I've grappled with since we started doing this work, Kaylin, and I've really wrestled with it. And I actually finally came to the place where I was like, okay, I hated the word sacrifice, but of course, Kaylin was helping me understand it's to make sacred. And so it helped me to understand it's not a bad word. There's something about that that's actually really beautiful and powerful. And then what is my greatest fear, and to what lengths will I go to meet and transform that fear into strength and wholeness? That's another potent morning star question.
Yes. So these questions are great to ask if you're a morning star or if Venus is in her morning star phase.
Yes.
So yeah. So now we're going to, so from the morning star phase, we go to the underworld. And this is the underworld where Venus is with the sun for 60 to 90 days. And it's the phase of the story. So she's gone through the descent. She's had to let go of everything. She arrives in the Sumerian telling, they say she's stripped naked and bare, right? She's vulnerable. And then she comes face to face with the dark goddess, her sister, who kills her. And now she's dead. And so she goes through this death process. So one of the things when we really started feeling into this is we realized that this is the realm. This is definitely the Scorpio realm, the death and rebirth realm, the shamanic death and rebirth. And so we're adding the water realm, the feeling realm, because there's also this opportunity to really have empathy and compassion and to grieve for our own experience, for the human experience, for our human family, whether that's our immediate family or, the whole human family of all of us living on the earth at this particular time. And what is it that we need to die to in order so that we can be reborn? It's kind of like one of the things we say in the descent journey is we're dying to who we believe ourselves to be so we can be reborn to who we really are. That's what Anana is choosing. She's choosing the initiation so that she can do that. And Tammy spoke into that a little bit as, in the morning star, she's like, okay, I'm going to the underworld. I'm choosing this initiation. It's not forced on her. She's not abducted into the underworld. She's choosing to do this. So whatever sign your natal Venus is in, then you're going to add a shamanic initiatory quality to that Venus. And so if you have Venus in Scorpio, this is like part of what you're doing anyway. So it's not like, it just makes it bigger. If you have Venus in Aquarius, this might be challenging, right? Because it's like, how can I be in greater expanded states of consciousness when I'm in this process of death and dying? So this is how we can really get a deeper insight into what our own Venus is going through, and we realize what phase we were born into in the story. And the whole purpose of the underworld journey is to have that death and rebirth process for greater empowerment and wholeness. It is not meant to be a punishment. It is an initiation that is here to strengthen us. So the intent is the opportunity to integrate the shadow and light. And we tend to be sometimes more light polarized. I think that is changing in this time and in this day and age. But I know when I was growing up, I think especially like even my parents who were spiritually oriented, it was like, we only want to look at the good stuff. We don't look at the bad stuff. And of course, the bad stuff was rampant because they weren't looking at it and they weren't dealing with it. So in that sense, this underworld time is really dying to our false self, whatever that is, so we can be reborn to our true self. And that happens over and over every time Venus goes into the underworld, which happens every 19 months for about 2 or 3 months. So regardless of whether you have Inanna underworld Venus star phase, when Venus is in the underworld, this is what's happening collectively. And this is also about then the ability, or, you know, what the intent is to learn how to masterfully move between the worlds, the world of the living, the world of the dead, the world of transformation, alchemy, all of those things. It's like in that, through the being able to go deeply into the feeling realm, and then also mastering letting go, releasing, surrendering, relinquishing some things that some of us don't want to do. I know sometimes I've had to been taken kicking and screaming. Like I really wanted to hold on to something and it was going and I couldn't hold on to it. So, but it really is creating opportunity to feel the deepest feelings, to feel the joy, the ecstasy, the grief, the pain, all of it, not just the good stuff, but all of it, so that we're empowered from the inside out. It's meant to empower us. And then also learning the power of grief to ignite greater life force. And I could tell a longer story about this, but it is, many cultures have done practices around grieving, and it is so powerful because we don't do that. We tend to sit on our grief and hold it in our body, and it so unless we're willing to really grieve and allow ourselves to really grieve, then we don't have as much access to life force energy. So the gift of the underworld phase of Venus is that to remind us that, yeah, we really do need to grieve or be mad if we need to be mad or whatever it is. So in that sense, it's taking us deeper than ever before, learning that it's okay to go into those deep, dark, scary places. So is there anything you want to add?
Oh, just that for anyone who really works with depth psychology or Jungian work, it's the time to face the shadow and integrate the shadow, basically.
Yeah.
And a person who is born in the underworld, that is a big part of your work.
Exactly. So the Inanna underworld challenges, there are many of them. These are just a few. And in fact, everything, looking at the intent, there's more intent. We're just giving you the essence of the intent. We're giving you the essence of the challenges, and because there's a lot more we can always go into, but we just have enough time to get into this much of it now. So to give you a really good understanding of what this is about. So if you have an underworld Venus, or Venus is in the underworld in her cycle, she just came out of the underworld last month. So, you know, if you were feeling any of this during the summertime, well, it was probably because Venus was in the underworld, or it could have been because of that reason. But you might experience one or more of these, feeling at the effect of circumstances that are beyond your control. It's like there's some things we can't control. Like if our house is on fire, then the only thing we can really do is get the hell out, right? We don't want to burn up with the house. I mean, I guess we could be stubborn and say no, you know, and then we're taken out in a different way. But it can feel very disempowering. The intent is to bring greater empowerment, but initially, you know, things are, if the house is on fire, you have to leave the house. That feels disempowering, but perhaps on the other side of that, you get a better house. You get a better place to live. You have, you know, you have a deeper something that's going on. So that's the opportunity. You can also feel that life is too much because there's a lot of loss. Maybe you have a loss of a home or relationships or a job or, you know, things that are really important to you. Maybe health situations that come up, so that, you know, the losses that come up that we might have to encounter in that death and rebirth process. Emotional intensity. So this is where we might feel, you know, that we can no longer not feel our anger. We can no longer not feel our frustration or our grief or our despair or our depression because it is just so there that it cannot be ignored. And that's actually a good thing, but we often think of it as a bad thing, like somehow we failed. But really, when we are taken into those deeper places, then we know that we're going to become, on the other side of that, become empowered. There can be also intense experiences that we might experience: illness, accidents, disasters, death of a loved one. You know, it can go on and on, but that gives you a sense of it. So it's not necessarily an easy time. Literally, Anana in the story is dead. And then she's brought back to life, but first she has to die. She has to go through that death. So the other challenge that you can face in the underworld phase of the Venus cycle is you gotta face your fears constantly. And you know, you might feel like you did a really good job and you faced that fear and you got past it, and then you get another fear that comes along and you get to face that one. Woohoo! And then the other challenge, not understanding what the heck is going on. Like if you're in that process of dissolution, of death and dying, of having to face fears and integrate shadow and whatever that's all about, it can feel confusing, especially for those of us in the culture that hasn't really supported that. And part of what we feel we're bringing back with these mysteries is that understanding and how we can support each other in those times.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you, Kaylin. Just want to add that for those of you who do work with astrology, you know, I'm sure you've seen this too, Kaylin, that there can be an individual who has no Pluto, no Scorpio in the chart, nothing in the 8th house, but if they have Venus in the underworlds, it is going to show up that way. And they might have lighthearted signs, you know, in other areas, but if it's an underworld Venus, it's that individual, these are going to be themes in that person's life. And when you bring this up to them in their chart, especially if they've gone to other astrologers, they're going to be so grateful to you.
Yes.
What?
Yes, they are.
They can tell you, okay, like I never really resonated with what other people told me about my chart, because there's this whole thing, this undercurrent, and it's so affirming to understand that this is the deeper kind of trajectory, the deeper life initiatory path that you're on. And it's not like you're always going to feel all of these things, but this is an underlying theme. You're here to really cultivate profound depth of soul and all of these qualities of wholeness, to really do the shadow work at a deep level.
And when you do it, you become empowered in ways that you couldn't even imagine. Mm-hmm. And so it's not a punishment. It's not that you were wrong or bad, or you did something wrong in a past life or whatever. It's just, this is the journey. This is the initiation that takes us to that place of greater empowerment. And as we get older, like I can say in my earlier life, having gone through a lot of death and rebirth experiences, and I always thought God was punishing me for doing something wrong. I couldn't figure out what. With this understanding, it was like, oh, I was off track and I needed to get back on track, and that's what it took. And sometimes it just took a really extreme circumstance to get me to move into something new and to let go of what I had going on.
And that's so human. I just want to say quickly about that too, though, that there are people who keep jumping in. There's just more people. So just to give a little bit of a orientation, that what we're talking about, first of all, it's to say, you know, if you know what your Venus star phase is, if you know if you were born evening star, morning star, or underworld, or the other underworld, we're going more into depth with that. Even if you don't understand that, keep in mind, for example, that a moment ago, when we talked about morning star, you might consider that Venus was in her morning star phase most recently from November 2nd of 2018 until what, July 12th, I think, of this summer. So that was
something like that, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
early July. Yeah.
Right. So from really basically Samhain until a little bit after summer solstice of this year, Venus has been in a morning star phase. So it's something we all have been experiencing, is this like letting go, descent process. Venus is in the underworld from about July 9th until September 19th, and she's really just been coming out. So this has been an underworld phase that we're all kind of collectively going through. So you can work with what we're talking to you about on the level of if it's your chart or someone else's chart that you know, and you can also consider the energy of this part of the cycle based on our current Venus cycle.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And also some questions that you can be with, whether Venus is in the underworld or whether you have an underworld Venus process. And when you're in your 8-year Venus return and Venus is in the underworld phase, and then these questions, and these are just a couple of them. We have lots more, of course, but just to, kind of get you started. So what would it take for me to deeply feel my feelings, face my fears, grieve whatever I need to grieve, and let go of who I believe myself to be? That is such a big question. And boy, can you journal around that for probably a really long time. I look back at some of my old journals and I realized I was journaling around that, though I did not know it. Because it's like, I definitely have I wasn't born in the underworld phase, but I have a lot of other underworld signatures on my chart. And so I've dealt with this one a lot. And then what would it take for me to die to whatever is in the way of me living and expressing my true self? And sometimes when we're going through these kinds of cycles or these phases, or we're born with this underworld phase, that's what really is happening, is to get whatever is in the way of you living your true self. How do you get past that? How do you get back on the right track? And that's what the universe is really trying to bring you. So that's pretty awesome. Anyway, so now we're going to look at the evening star phase. And so one of the reasons that Tammy did the morning star phase is because she's a morning star, and I'm doing the evening star phase because I'm an evening star, and she'll be doing the metamorphic underworld. But because we just feel such an affinity to our star phase. And as I was saying earlier, for those of you who might not have heard that, when I understood this, I'm actually Venus in Aries. It's supposed to be a very fierce and, like kind of in your face expression of the feminine that's going to stand for her cause and do whatever needs to be done. And I've been much more, because I'm an evening star, I'm more reflective. I'm going to think about things. I don't just jump in. And that was so helpful to know, because I thought I was doing it wrong. Yeah. So what happens in the evening sky, and this is what we're going through right now, hence why we did the evening star invocation, is that when the sun sets, Venus is in the sky for anywhere up to 3 or 4 hours after the sun sets. Right now it's not that much, and it's still a little challenging to see, but hopefully in the next week or so you'll be able to see the crescent moon with Venus. Representing the next chakra gate and the next level of ascent for Venus. And then basically what she's doing is she's emerging from the underworld, and now she's surrounded by stars. We can see that, we see this is what we see. And so there were some cultures that saw this as her being welcomed back from her long journey. Like the star people are there to support her and welcome her and celebrate her, because she has she's rising up from this death and rebirth process that she's been through. She's empowered with that. So the Greeks saw evening star Venus as Hesperus, and also as Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. So you see Aphrodite here rising up out of the ocean, but maybe out of the underworld is another way of looking at that. The Maya saw the evening star as Lammat, and that really for them translated out as to love star, and basically having to do with inner love. And the self-love that's nurtured from within will grow and radiate into the world and will powerfully touch and transform every aspect of life. So evening star Venus, that love goddess, that expression of love, is going to permeate everything that we're experiencing. And of course, the Sumerians and the Babylonians, they have the Inanna Ishtar stories, and they saw Venus in the evening sky as the fully initiated high priestess, queen of heaven. So she's got a wisdom aspect. Well, basically, we'll see, you're going to add earth to the evening star. That's high priestess energy, because she's been through the initiation. Now she's a priestess to the world. She's also a wise one, because she's been through the death and rebirth process. And she is a love goddess, bringing that love energy into the world, because she now is being reborn into her true self, so she can bring that in. So the intent of this evening star Venus is to really integrate the wisdom that has been gained from the underworld initiation, and also to because of, if you think of the that earthy practical essence of the evening star goddess, she's here to be strategic in her choices, and also considering and reflecting before she is going to take action, so she can get the best results I love that so much, being an evening star Venus. Like, right? So, and so if it takes you a little longer to act, but then you get really good results from it, then it's like not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And then also the intent is to learn how to be a practical service, to embody the sacred, to be that high priestess, to be that one who is bringing the sacred element back into our understanding, especially from a divine feminine perspective that has been lost to our culture. And also she's strengthening and cultivating embodied love and pleasure. I love that. So that's the evening star Venus. Like, you went through the hell realms, you went through that death process, and now you get to have love and pleasure. How cool is that? So, and it's also the intent to urge and invite others to embrace their own initiatory journey. So, you know, once she's in the evening sky and she's been through it, she's survived it, she's like now in that place of celebrating, and she's like, you know, this is a really good process. You will love it. It'll change your life. You need to do it, right? And she'll support you to do it.
I love it because I'm out on the other end.
Right. So that intent to go deep and, you know, to ascend and but also go deep simultaneously and cultivate personal genius, creativity, brilliance, creatorship. This is all evening star intent. And yet there may be some challenges. So you might experience one or more of these challenges. And of course, that might also depend on what sign Venus is in. So one of the things I'll say is Venus, my natal Venus being in Aries, I am not really slow to change. I do embrace change. And in fact, my husband, who's got a lot of earth, tends to be like, whoa, slow down, hold it. But I will take my time in making a decision when it feels like that's what I need to do. So taking too long to act and missing opportunities can be one of the challenges of the evening star. And literally, I have done that too. Not acting at all, being like, you know, like I can't make a decision. I don't know what to do. Is this the best thing to do? Overthinking it, you know, being too rational and too trying to figure it all out. Sometimes we do just need to trust. And then being too detail oriented or being overly critical or controlling or unwise in the decisions that we're making can be one of the challenges. And also being out of sync with sacred time. So if those things are happening, if you're an evening star, then you somehow, this is one of the challenges that it's good to meet and to then, you know, transform within yourself or to become more aware of within yourself. So anything else on that, Tammy?
No, I mean, I appreciate it because I can see where some of these qualities also happen for someone. You know, we talk about how it's connected to Saturn. We can think of it as connected to Saturn, for example. So if you have strong Saturn, you might have some of these same qualities. It's kind of a restraining kind of medicine. But I will say that what I've noticed sometimes with Evening Star is that it might be a person who more than anyone else needs to be reminded or encouraged to see and know that she is initiated. She knows certain things that she needs to honor in herself. There might actually sometimes be a humbleness that's beautiful, but where that individual, that woman, or even that man needs to be told, look, you've been initiated. You need to speak your truth because there are gems there. There's a lot of wisdom and you might be so hesitant, but you need to maybe, you know, activate more of those morning star qualities on the level that you actually share what you know.
Right. Knowing what you know or trusting. And, you know, sometimes this also does bring up that sense that sometimes people are like, I can't teach this or I can't do this because I don't know enough.
Yeah, exactly.
So then that hesitation, that not acting or taking too long to act or, you know, missing those opportunities. And also the other thing to know is that regardless of what phase you're born into, when you go through a Venus return every 8 years, you go through every single phase. And so you come more into the strength and the intent of your specific phase every time you go through an 8-year Venus return. So, so the more you go through, the better. I'm in my 8th Venus return. And I have to say the first few were really hard. And my last one, my age 56, and now the one I'm in now, wow, like night and day. And I still have a few little challenges, but it's been far more inspiring because I understand it and I can work with it. And it just changes everything when you have that perspective to work with it. So some questions you might want to work with. What would it take for me to skillfully use my wisdom in making timely, informed, and sensible decisions? Right? And then what could you experience as a result of that? Like what magic can happen as a result of that? And how can I more fully appreciate, savor, and enjoy the sacred beauty of life, the intimacy, the connection, that place of being the love goddess and being in that place? So when Venus is in the evening sky, and after she's gone through all the gates and made her ascent, when she gets to be about 28 to 29 degrees from the sun, she will station retrograde. And it always happens in the evening sky. So if you have an evening star Venus and Venus is retrograde, you're in that final synthesis of the cycle that has been taking place. There's some integration and synthesis that's happening. And this is like, again, one of the inner star phases that we speak to in the deeper work that we do when we go into the to the specific parts of the Venus cycle. And it's a rare part of the cycle. It's only 16 days retrograde in the evening sky. So, I think the retrograde period is, the whole retrograde period is about 40 days, but it's only 16 days retrograde in the evening sky, only 16 days retrograde in the morning sky. And now we're going into the metamorphic underworld, and it's only 8 days in the metamorphic underworld. So it's the most rare part of the cycle.
Yep. Yeah, so the metamorphic underworld phase, it's always fun to meet people who are born in this phase. And you'll always know it because they're Venus retrograde and it's within 10 degrees of the sun. So these individuals carry the qualities of Gemini, the shapeshifter, magical feminine, Aquarius, taking the quantum leap in consciousness, experiencing in their lifetime totally identity shifts. There's a Libra kind of radical transformation of relationship between self and other. So there's an air kind of quality. It's the quantum realm, you could say. And so you are here, if this is you, and then also consider, this has to do with every time Venus goes through this phase, we're all invited to activate these qualities internally. But if you find a person who's born with this signature, at this phase, you are here for quantum leaps in consciousness through death and transmutation of old states of awareness. And this is a celestial surrender experience, different from the Inanna underworld, deeply felt surrender. It's in some kind of paradoxical way, it is a death, but it's also the deepest liberation experience, the most profound liberation. So like the caterpillar transforming into a completely new form and identity as the butterfly, your sacred initiation is to experience the complete dissolution of your previous form into a new incarnation of yourself.
Right.
So, yeah. And then the metamorphic underworld intent is to willingly surrender limited identity perspectives and awareness for rapid transformation into liberated consciousness. It's to experience time more fluidly, free of linear time and 3D reality constraints through expanded states of awareness. And to create a field of possibility, magic, joy, to uplift others in ways that accelerate experiences of cosmic consciousness. And I've definitely seen this with a number of metamorphic goddesses who I know that is exactly what they do in their worlds and their lives. They affect that kind of powerful change because they've stepped into their role as world changers. And it's to take quantum leaps in consciousness that accelerate humanity's evolutionary, for some reason I can't read that from my
development.
Development, thank you.
Right.
Awesome. So, of course, there are also challenges on the path for these individuals. Their lives are marked by profound radical change and shifts. They might have lightning fast change, dying and being reborn so quickly it can feel disorienting and confusing. They might wonder, who am I? How did I get here? Because again, they're often in these places of radical identity shift. They're challenged to continue.
Just to say real quickly, Tammy, the reason that is because it's only 7 or 8 days that this is taking place. It's so fast. There's a whole 19-month cycle, and in all the other phases, there's, you know, the minimum of 60 days. This is happening in 7 or 8 days. It's so quick. So yeah.
Think about it, it's beautiful. Yeah, and if you think about the phenomenon, it's like it even, I think, can be as short as 4 days.
Yeah. Well,
Like
in
Aries
fact,
cycle.
wasn't it the Aries cycle where it was in the evening sky one day,
Yes.
and the next day it was in the morning sky? So, you know, but the 7 or 8 days were like a ceremonial number that the Sumerians and the Babylonians gave to that part
But
of the
to
cycle.
consider how radical that is, consider yourself to be a person, a priest or priestess connected to the sky mysteries. At a time where we didn't have TV, we didn't have anything like that. You observe the cycles of the sun and the moon. The eclipses would be a massive event. When Venus appears, Venus is evening star, evening star, evening star, evening star, and then all of a sudden disappears with the sun and then reappears as morning star in the morning sky. That's a big event. That's understood that that's reflecting something massive happening for the collective on Earth. So, so yeah, it's a big shift, and it's a rapid shift. And so there could be, for an individual born with this signature or this phase, a sense of amnesia. Like, I think I know this, but do I really know this? Like, who am I really, and what do I really know?
Yeah, you know, when you know, I guess the sort of esoteric perspective of when we die is we have to let go of everything that we've known previously, so we can start fresh and anew. So, you know, it's it's definitely an interesting challenge.
Yep.
Yeah.
So some of the questions could be, what would it take for me to surrender to metamorphic process? So, you know, to really deepen into that, like it's not a linear process. It's the complete breakdown and complete transformation into something new. How can I learn to transcend the limitations of duality, form, linear awareness, and time, acknowledging I am an alchemical being? And how do I support others in living magical lives full of possibility, wonder, and spiritual alchemy? And so, again, just to remind all of those listening, because I suspect many of you are not born in this phase, that each of us over the course of our lifetimes has experienced this phase. So it's seeded into our consciousness. So these are questions for all of us. It's just that if it's your personal signature or phase, Venus phase, it's something that you're going to live as an undercurrent for your whole life. So now I think it's time to just do a little activation. And then I'm not sure what our timing is right now. It's 8:03. Okay, we're going to do a little activation and then share a little bit more. And then we're going to do some Q&A, I think. So before we do that, then let's just I'm just going to ask that everyone kind of close your eyes and make sure that maybe if you're seated, that you have your feet on the earth. You feel the weight of your sit bones in your chair. If you're lying down, just feel the contact of your back with the bed or the floor. And put your hands on your belly, both of your hands. And just take a couple of deep cleansing breaths. And then bring one hand up to your heart. And take a moment to connect into sensations into your body and see if there are any areas of your body where you feel any discomfort or heaviness. And as you feel that, to bring now both of your hands to that part of your body. And now open your inner eye, your inner perspective, so that you can see, feel, or know whatever burden, whatever challenge, whatever issue it is that you might be holding in this part of your body that wants to be seen and acknowledged now. So it might be a worry you've been carrying about someone you love and worry that you care about. It might be one of those kind of repetitive thoughts or beliefs that you're really struggling with and trying to come into resolution around. It might be an inner kind of battle or struggle that you've been working through for quite some time to try to make some kind of decision in your life that feels difficult to make. It might be heartbreak around some dynamic in relationship that you don't know how to resolve on your own. And it might be something else. Whatever that burden is, I'm going to ask now that it's almost like you've got your hands kind of in contact with that part of your body where that energy lives, and you're going to kind of scoop that out, and now you're going to kind of put your hands before you and kind of see, feel, or know this issue, this burden, as if it might be an object, it might be a living kind of being. It might be a little piece of paper with a message or a phrase written on it. You might even see yourself, witnessing yourself with compassion in this dynamic or this context where maybe it's you kind of worrying and feeling stressed and you see yourself like that, or you in a dynamic with someone else, whatever it is. Let that image of whatever this burden is for you emerge and arise in your hands in a way you can see, feel, and know it, a little bit separate from yourself. And now I want you to open your awareness to see that before you are 4 doors. When you look, the first door is flaming red, the color of fire. You know that door represents morning star Venus. The second door is a black door, and you know that represents the underworld's goddess, underworld Inanna Venus. The third door is earthy brown, and that is evening star Venus. And the fourth door you see is silvery blue, and that is the metamorphic goddess, the metamorphic underworld Venus. So I want you to just tune in, drop into your inner knowing for a moment. And you may choose the door. If you know what your phase is, you might choose that door. If you don't know, or even if you do though, you might actually feel a tug in your awareness to choose a different one. So I'm just going to encourage you to let your intuition lead you to one of those 4 doors. And so now you arrive in front of that door and open that door and step in. And as you do, you now feel as if you have stepped into another realm. The earth is solid beneath your feet, but when you look out into space, you see the galaxies swirling. You see that you've stepped in a sense out into the vast and beautiful night sky. And now you see appear before you a beautiful shimmering goddess, the goddess of this Venus star phase. And as you look into her eyes, and she looks into your eyes, you see and feel and know the deep love and the deep witnessing that she holds for you. You know that she has been with you many times before. And you also know that she carries special insight and wisdom that can support you in transforming this burden that you carry into a gift. And so it is that you offer to her this burden. And she takes it from your hands. And as she does, you feel a lightening. And as she takes it into her hands, she has a message for you of some sort. And as she takes it, she tells you in one way or another, the reason she can take this burden is because she is a part of you. She is a wisdom that lives so deep in you. A part of you that knows how to use her special sacred medicine to transform this challenge, this burden on your path into wisdom, into love, into grace, into liberation and freedom. And so as she takes it, she now offers something to you. It might be through the form of words. It might be that she actually takes this object. You can see her close her hands around it. And now she opens them. And what you see in her hands might be a shimmering light. It might be a gift just for you. It might be an image of you feeling healed and whole and happy, having resolved this issue. Whatever it is, she now offers it to you, and it is exactly the medicine that you are needing. So take it in. You might choose to take it and place it in your heart. Or in some other way to bring this medicine, this energy of transformation and healing into your body. And once that process is complete, you now put your hands out and you actually take her hands in your hands. And again, you might feel that sensation, that vibration of that medicine that she carries, and feel your connection with her. And you know you are always connected. You always have the wisdom in the inside of this Venus phase, of this Venus goddess. You're in contact with her, and you can now truly access this medicine in a very conscious way. So now that you have received, almost as if there is a transmission from her hands to your body, this silvery stream of light, of wisdom, of insight that now streams into your body, you now feel filled with that essence, with that wisdom. You now bring your hands back to your heart, and you give gratitude to this goddess, this Venus phase goddess. You bow to her, and she bows to you. And then you turn around, go back through that door, you'll come back down into your full body, into the present moment, back into the place where you began, bringing all parts of yourself and a little bit more back into the present moment, back into now. And when you're ready, just open your eyes and return to our circle with the gift of the Venus phase that you encountered in your journey. And all is well. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Woohoo. That was awesome. Oh. So as people are coming back, there's just a couple more things we want to share to wrap this up, and then we can move into Q&A. So we do offer a Venus Signature Series class that goes more deeply into everything that we've talked about, you know, and how to look at the sign and phase of Venus. So whether you're in one of the 4 phases, also the inner phases that we talked about, there's about at least 20 inner star phases that actually adds to our understanding. There are meta goddesses, the sign Venus is in when she begins her cycle, adds another flavor of energy to our understanding of our Venus signature. The sign the sun is in, and if you have Venus conjunct the sun in the same sign, then maybe it's not as much of an influence, but you will be in an underworld phase of the Venus cycle. So the influence of the energy or the style that you're connecting with your Venus is very important in terms of the sun, how the sun is helping to define that. And then the moon is, we could say, the old way of connecting to the feminine. So for women, it would be their old feminine expression. For men, it would be their old connection to the feminine. And so that gives us also information. So like, is it a big dramatic shift from, say, an earth sign to an air sign, or a fire sign, or a water sign to, you know, or an air sign to an earth sign? Like, those things can really give us deeper insights into our Venus signature. Also, the new mystery school of current life intent. How is that Venus showing up, and what mystery school is she going to? Really helps us to understand that. And then the outer planets. So from Saturn out, we look at from Saturn out, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, as teachers, as guides, as initiators. So understanding their influence and the flavor they're adding to Venus, so helpful. And I will just say that I was kind of fixated on my Neptune opposition to my Venus. And when we did this, I realized I had been ignoring the fact that I have Uranus square my Venus, and how that has been showing up for me. And it was like, oh my gosh, I have to start bringing that in and celebrating that and honoring that aspect of myself, because it's so important. And I just been kind of ignoring it. So it can be really, really helpful to have this information, to understand what, you know, and it's each of these planets has an intent. It's not meant to be something that holds you back or is difficult and challenging, though you may experience it that way. So anything you want to say about any of that, Tammy?
Oh, no, just that by the time we complete with this course and all these different components, we have a process to help people kind of dissolve all of that, so that it really helps you move into a deeper wholeness of understanding of all these different component parts. But it is so potent and powerful to go through this whole deep process of unwrapping, kind of like unwrapping this deeper gift, ever unraveling, like deeper understanding of who you are. The connection with the goddess from the past is really potent to understand, and the relationship between these things. There's just, you know, to imagine a world where every woman and every man knows this about themselves and receives this deep of a transmission, because it really is it's a procedure we take you through to comprehend at a deep embodied level all these layers of how the feminine shows up for you. When I imagine what the world would be like if every woman had access to this wisdom, it's really, I think, so vital for our time, because it honors the nuance and the complexity and the subtlety of our journey as women or as men in our relationship with the feminine. And the, you know, I often think it's like a light turns on, and we get to experience this. It's like being filled out with this full goddess expression that is who we are. And what's also beautiful about it, if you think about the Inanna journey, is that it connects us just as much with our humanity and the descent aspect as it does with our divine aspect. So knowing this, when I say it helps us fill out the goddess within, it's also deeply anchoring us into this earth experience, 3D reality right now, as these alive present goddesses who are so needed in our world, fully lit up and turned on and self-knowing and claiming our initiatory gifts. So that's, yeah, it's just.
And really, we're looking at how the parts define the whole, right? So as it says here, like that was Aristotle's thing about the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. And so there's all these pieces, but by the end, we show you how to put them all together and create a synthesis and understanding. And so you can celebrate and honor that aspect of yourself that you're here to learn about, to explore, to express, to help evolve, all those things. Yeah, so we'd love to have you join us for we're going to have our first, this class has been created. We just recreated it in a new way, so you can engage it at any time, but we're going to be doing live Q&A, and our first one will be coming up soon, here within a couple of weeks. And that's all, that information is all on the Venus Signature Series page at venusalchemy.com. So if you go to the classes, I think, and then you click on the drop down, and it'll just say Comprehensive Venus Signature Series, and you can get the details. Awesome. So I think we're done with this part.
Excellent. So yeah, so now's our time for breakout, or no, I'm sorry, for Q&A. And so let's start with the chat, maybe. Kayla, what do you think about? Sure. Just looking and seeing if there are any questions there that feel, let's see.
I mean, people have been saying where they're from because before
Okay, great. Awesome.
we asked them to do that so people can check that out. But somebody does just put, to me. Okay. I have been told that Venus is combust in my chart, the Sun 20 Cancer and Venus 25 Cancer, born just before noon, Libra rising 5 degrees. I'd love to embrace Venus more. From Darlene. So Darlene, yeah, that is one of the ways that traditional astrology talks about it as combust. I don't know that that's a helpful term. And I'm guessing that it's not retrograde. Venus is not retrograde. So if you know if Venus is retrograde or not, you could chat that in. But if it's not retrograde, you are definitely in the underworld phase of the Venus cycle. And in Cancer, not retrograde. Okay, good. Yeah, so the underworld phase of the cycle. So in Cancer, and that is one of the archetypes of the feminine in our culture that has been highly supported for women to be the caretaker, the nurturer, and to be taking care of everybody else, often at your own expense. And so the underworld phase would say, if you do that too much, you're probably going to wind up having health issues or some kind of breakdown or something that's going to say, stop, take care of yourself, make you the most important. And then from a place of fullness, you can take care of others, but you do it in a way that's not from how the patriarchal culture has said women are supposed to take care of everybody else. Yeah. And you might want to add something to that, Tammy.
Oh, no, I don't know. It's just such an essential learning. As a Cancer, South Node and IC. But I will say that I also got a personal message, and it's from Ligon Baker. And she said, my Venus is 0 degrees in Aquarius and Sun is 14 degrees also in Aquarius, both in the 9th house. Is that considered Venus morning star? So this is a good example where Venus is kind of ahead of the Sun in a sense. So it's going to be evening star. So
wait, so what were the degrees again?
Wait, it's okay. Sun is 14 degrees in Aquarius. Venus is 0 degrees. So Venus is.
So the Sun. So the Sun is right. Venus is rising before the Sun. So it's a morning star.
Yeah.
And just has come. Well, if it's not retrograde, it may be just going into the underworld. If it's retrograde, it's just come out of the metamorphic underworld.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if Ligon, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. She's still on. You might say if it's retrograde or not. I'm guessing not. Do you know, is it retrograde, Ligon? Okay. In any case, yeah, morning star. Beautiful. So morning star
probably getting ready to go into the underworld.
Yeah, probably so. Awesome. Okay. Great. Okay, so anybody else have questions? Live
and
questions?
You can unmute yourself if you do, or you can type in the chat, whatever works for you.
And if you want to, if there's anything, if you got anything from the activation, you can share that too, or if you have questions.
Could you explain what phase Venus is in right now? Yeah, we've been talking about that. It's in the evening star. It just rose as an evening star in September. And it went through, it had the first Venus moon conjunction at the end of September. And I think it's October 29th, it's going to have another Venus moon conjunction representing, so that's the first conjunction represented the root chakra gate, getting her root chakra back, her royal robe back. That was the vestment that she gets back. She reclaims a healthy relationship with that on her ascent. And now she's ascending to the second chakra, or to the sacral chakra. And that'll be exact on October 29th. So that's exactly where we are in the cycle right now. And so Venus will be evening star until May. I think it goes retrograde in May of this year. And so we'll have 16 days of Venus retrograde in May, and then it will go through its metamorphic. Actually, it's going to go into early June. That goes into its metamorphic phase. And then by June 9th, I believe it is, June 9th, it's going to rise as morning star in a new cycle.
Gemini cycle. Yeah. So, but I think, this question is nice because it's also important, I think, to recognize that the phase Venus is in now is that she's still quite difficult to see in the evening sky because she hasn't been out of the underworld for very long. So for a person who's born at this part, like the early part of the evening star cycle, it's going to feel different because she's just, and for all of us now collectively, there's kind of a tenderness or a little bit of a rawness often that we will feel because we've just been through a big initiation. And so when you're born at the beginning phase of the Venus evening star, that can feel different than if you were born, much closer to when Venus is about to disappear, in that metamorphic underworld phase.
Right. Yeah. So, or even in the later gates, the chakra gates. So, because I'm at I'm an evening star at the throat chakra gate.
Yeah.
So, Venus is bright. And the moon are really easy to see. Whereas right now it's a little more challenging.
It's faint, and she feels a little faint because she just died. We all just went through this death rebirth process collectively. So be gentle with ourselves. So Claudette Thomas, hi Claudette. She says, my Venus is at 1 Sag. That's exactly my Venus degree. How fun is that? My sun is at 13 Sag. It's 12 degrees from the sun, just 2 degrees from being in the metamorphic phase. Wow. Curious why 10 degrees is the marker and the implications of being just 2 degrees away for any of the transitions. Yeah, well, clearly then it would be retrograde. So is that right?
Well, so there's 2 times when Venus would be that close to the sun. One when she's just risen and as morning star retrograde. And then the second time is when she's getting ready to disappear into the underworld, but she's not retrograde. So if Venus is not retrograde, she's getting ready to disappear into the longer metamorphic underworld. I mean, not metamorphic underworld, the Anana underworld. Right. So if Claudette, if you know if Venus is retrograde or not, that gives us the understanding if it's closer to the metamorphic or if it's closer to the Anana underworld.
She's not retrograde.
So then it's getting ready to go into the Anana underworld.
Yeah. So yeah. She's actually not metamorphic. She's about to go into that.
Right.
Metamorphic. So, I mean, underworld, the Anana underworld. So,
right.
So she's about to go into this deeper ceremonial death process.
Yes. And the reason we use 10 degrees, just to answer that part of the question, is the ancients, it's like if you take your hand and put your fist out, from one side of the fist to the other side of the fist is about 10 degrees, and that's considered a conjunction. And we have to, and so not every Venus cycle is going to be the same. Sometimes it's going to be visible sooner and sometimes later, and sometimes, it's not, it's going to disappear sooner and sometimes later. So we use 10 degrees as a way to have an understanding of when to mark things because we just can't always know if we're going to try to come up with something. This is just the way to do that. So we use the 10 degree orb. So it could be that, it's very rare that Venus at 12 degrees wouldn't be seen in the morning sky. Because especially when she's retrograde, because she's really bright. But in the evening, as she's getting ready to drop into the underworld, she can disappear sooner sometimes, but I've actually seen her in the morning sky getting ready to drop into the underworld at 8 degrees. And, so yeah, it's just, that's the only way we know how to figure out how to mark it. So if you go out and look at it and have your own relationship, we're not saying this is the be all end all of how to do it, but it gives us a framework to work with since we can't see every single one of them necessarily. So.
Right. So, okay. So lots of questions about individual Venuses. Let's see. Okay. Sun is at 10 degrees Pisces. Venus is at 23 degrees Aries. So again, that's
evening star.
Coming after it's morning.
It's star. It's evening star. I have the same thing. I have a Pisces,
really?
Aries, Venus. Yeah. And I'm an evening star. So that's exact same configuration I have.
Nice. How interesting. And that's Alicelin. I'm not sure that I'm saying your name right. And Chivelas. Venus is at 3 degrees Cancer and Sun is at 5 degrees Gemini. And Venus is out of bounds by declination.
Ooh.
Nice.
Yeah, that's another class we're going to do one of these days. The out of bounds of Venus.
Yeah, how
Yeah.
that affects me. Yep.
Right? So that is Sun rising before Venus, so that is an evening star Venus. And about out of bounds Venus, so that adds a wild card factor into the whole mix. That's, yeah.
Yeah. So when the inner planets, whether it's Venus, Mars, or Mercury, are out of bounds, it has to do with where they're at relative to the line that where the sun is at, basically that invisible line of where
Well,
the
the
sun.
sun can go 23.5 degrees north of east,
Right.
or 23.5 degrees south of east. And this is when the planet goes beyond that 23.5. So it's outside the boundaries of ordinary reality is essentially what it means when a planet is out of bounds. So it's a wild card. It's like it could be doing anything because it's not inside of our normal reality. So
you could say, I mean, it's already your sun's in Gemini. You could say in a sense that it adds even more of that kind of free electron, just unexpected, kind of wild factor to your Venus. So yeah.
To a much more traditional expression of the feminine as mother, as caretaker, as nurturer, as all that. So yeah,
So
not going to do it like everybody else.
Right. So considering, we also say that it's kind of like with Sun and Gemini, it's like you are the Cancer goddess burning Gemini fuel and now out of bounds. So what better person to really try to break free of the kinds of cultural patterning that Kaylin was talking about before, where you can get too stuck in caretaking mode and just holding other people's stuff in a heavy way and trying to heal it with your body. That's what I've often seen with the Cancer, the old Cancer. And instead with Gemini being like, how can I hold this in a lighter way? How can I use play as some kind of an alchemy to transform, to be a nurture in a new way, a playful way that is more fun and it's more lighthearted instead of just holding it all.
And as an evening star, there will be the wisdom aspect that's connected to it. There will be the priestess aspect and the love goddess aspect. So it's doing it from that place of great love and compassion for oneself first and then for others, and doing it wisely, not just like, the challenge can be, especially with Gemini, is it's all over the place. But so that it feels like that would help direct that creative Gemini energy, being an evening star.
Yeah, so what would it take, you might say, what would it take to have that kind of, that wildness and that free kind of spirit, but have it be channeled in a purposeful way? That's kind of paradoxical, but kind of an amazing thing to consider.
Right. Yeah.
That's so fun. Wait, okay. Sonia said, I can't believe Tammy just said that, because that's what happened with me during our activation that she took us through. That's fun. I'm not sure how that. Okay.
And somebody's asking about Placidus or whole sign. Actually, Tracy, she says Sun in Sagittarius at 2 degrees, Venus at Sagittarius at 7. That is definitely an underworld Venus, 5th house, not retrograde. So we don't go into the houses. That's going to be in an advanced class that we do at some point because they are important. But so, and Neptune is with all of that. So, and the North Node is there too. So that's probably similar to your signature, Tammy.
Yeah, it is, except for the underworld I don't have.
Except for the underworld,
it's funny because your Venus is conjunct my Venus, your Sun is conjunct my Venus, your Venus is conjunct my Mercury. But so with that, underworld Sagittarius, if you just look at your Venus and Sag or your Sun and Sag, you're not going to get the fact that you've got this. Think about it like you're adding a dose of Scorpio. The way you actually get to your higher vision and to your you go on that spirit quest that Sagittarius is going to go on is actually through the descent process. which can be really hard for the Sagittarius kind of person.
Like, can I just expand consciousness? Oh my gosh, I have to go into the deep feeling realm. That's
right.
and somebody is asking whether it's Placidus or whole sign. We do use whole sign house system. A whole long explanation we won't go into here, but when we do an advanced class on the houses and some other things, then we'll go into that more deeply.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're at our time.
I think we are too. So yeah, so thank you to everyone for being so present and engaged. And
yeah, love your questions. Awesome.
Yeah, awesome questions. So okay, so maybe we should just close with everybody just saying good night. And we're so excited to have any and all of you that would like to join us. Our Q&A is going to be November 7th. We recommend to people that they sign up if you want to take the Venus Signature Series and learn more about this. And just to say too, we do put everybody's charts up when we take this class. And so we have more of the kind of deeper conversation around the individual charts. And so we recommend people sign up as soon as they can, because there's so much material that the more you can kind of cover before the Q&A, the more you're going to get out of it.
And it's specifically going to be focused on the Venus star phases.
Yeah.
The first one. And also we'll need people's chart information to
we'll need that as soon as possible.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Unmute everybody so they can just say good night, because, oh my goodness, nobody could speak because they were unmuted. Well, okay, now you're unmuted. All right, good night. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.